Hi, my name is Carl. Some people know me as Lockie. I'm the music sing. I'm a keyboard player, organist, and I play in a couple of bands, and I've more recently been doing a lot of open mics, including the Tavern in Rendlesham, where I met this young man, Chris Burness. We've got this new project on the go, and you've asked me to come down to just ask a few questions about it, and I'm intrigued to know what you're going to be up to. So, your new album, is it your first album?
It's my very first debut.
Wow, your first debut album. So you've chosen, even though you sing, perform, do covers, play in a band, plus you've done instrumental work. So out of those two things that you do, you've chosen your first album is to be an instrumental album. So how far are you into the album as it is now?
We're pretty close. I think we've got about a track and a half left to do. So we're nearly there. And yeah, it may seem a bit odd. Why have I chosen that? To be honest, I completely did this by accident. I went with Rich Webb from WebTunes. I went to him to do a session just to see if he could collaborate with me on one of my instrumentals. And the next thing you know, I'm recording an EP, which then became an album. Got a bit carried away. He's a multi-instrumentalist, he plays everything, and working with him is just as what's kind of inspired me to do this, really, and get it out there. I'm in a very different place now musically from where I was when I used to write this stuff. This stuff I've written over the last 20 years, and the reason I wrote it was because I never used to be able to sing. I've had to work really hard at it to learn, and I wanted to go to open mic nights and support people, and if I didn't have a singer with me, all I could do was play instrumental stuff, and it sort of surprised me that it went down well, so I started to write more and more, and that's how this ended up happening. And also, I was so nervous when I used to play in front of people. What got me the confidence to get out there and do what I'm doing now is going to open mic nights, and I'd be shaking, I'd be worried for weeks, and I'd go to these kind of welcoming, nice spaces, and I'd play in front of people. So it's a bit of a contrast when you think I've got a gig next year which is going to be in front of 2,000 people, and I couldn't play in front of my mum. You know, it's ridiculous.
Hang on, you've got a gig in front of 2,000 people?
Yeah, with our band Midnight Road, yeah.
Okay.
I know. If it wasn't for the instrumental stuff I'd written, I wouldn't know you, I wouldn't be running open mic night, I wouldn't be an active musician, I'd be a bedroom player.
There's some fantastic open mics out there, seriously all over Suffolk. But your open mics are just like, to me, legendary. By the way, what's the name of the album?
It's called Chris Burness, the instrumental chapter.
Ooh.
Because it is just a chapter of my life where that's something I did, and that was all I really did before I joined any bands, and definitely before I never ever thought there'd be a day where I was doing singing and writing songs and doing stuff solo. So, you know, it feels a bit like the end of an era, and it's nice to capture that in a project, and yeah. I
get it now. So, you started doing instrumental work on the guitar, even though people mainly know you as a singing performer, doing lots of covers and the odd one that you've written that you drip feed into your performance. Yeah. But you're really going back to where you started.
Yeah, these are my roots. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say it's an end of an era, it's closure of all the things you've been doing in the last decade or two.
A couple of decades. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to sort of try to drill down a little bit. So your instrumentals are not just straightforward finger picking or just strumming. No. There's quite a technical aspect to what you do, because I've seen you detune your guitar and play around with it. Now, I'm not a guitarist. So what on earth are you doing when you're sitting down, tweaking it and retuning? Just give us is that what you do in some of these pieces?
In every single one of them. There's nothing on the album is in standard tuning, not one thing.
Wow. So you've got to explain what that means. If I was to play, let's say, a D chord shape and do that with your tuning, it won't sound like a D.
It would sound horrible.
Right. What analogy would you use for why are you doing it to your guitar? What would you liken it to? So, I mean, I'm a keyboard player, so could you draw me a comparison on a keyboard?
So it's a bit like on a keyboard, if you moved all the keys around,
Right.
You can still play it, but you can't use the same shapes, you can't use the same chords. So someone that can play keyboard wouldn't be able to play my keyboard because I would have moved all the notes around. And that's essentially what I've done. So it means then that everything I play I've had to do by ear.
Okay, my next question would be then, how did you even begin to do it? Are you just playing with the strings until you find something you like, or is there a method? Is there a template that in your head, this is how I want it to be, or was it a lot of trial and error?
It's just messing around with it and playing lots of horrible noises until they start to sound nice, finding something I like and then developing it.
Wow.
That's all. And there's a lot of open ringing strings in there as well, so you can get some nice complex melodies that you can arrange for one person. So I mean, if I was to write this all from scratch, I would not be playing stuff that was so complicated. I'd be using 2 or 3 different guitar parts.
Yeah.
But I've arranged everything for just one guitar because it's what I used to do live. And I use 2 different tunings. One's an open G minor, and the other one is a tuning I made up by accident.
Yeah.
I tried to learn a Newton Faulkner song and I tuned the guitar wrong, and he plays in all kinds of strange tunings. And basically I left my guitar sitting around for months, picked it up, didn't realise it was in the wrong tuning, and wrote a lot of stuff, and then realised that I created it accidentally. So
wow, that's impressive, and to me that's very clever, very complex. But I've heard the result of some of this stuff that you've been doing. It's very ambient, it's very cool, it's completely different, but it does give this sort of, not just an orchestral feel, but it just works. So this Tempest track, stunningly good, because some of your tracks are just clean guitar only, and some have got a little bit, maybe choral or orchestral stuff going on, but this one has got a little bit more dramatic. Sounds like there's some reverse explosions or some things going on. It's very powerful, and what I love about all your tracks, but this one in particular, is how it ebbs and flows. There's a real cool sort of intro, and then but you sense it building up, and then it goes into this dramatic state. And then you bring it right down again, and you took me on a journey, and I take it that's what you want the your listeners, when they hear it, to go on that journey.
It's funny you said that, because that's exactly what Rich said today in the studio. We sat and listened to the whole thing, start to finish, and he said that's a real journey.
Yeah.
And you know, I've got him to thank for that, because he's a wizard. He really is. Tempest
start to take this one, did it end up being what you thought it would be from the very inception of the idea?
It definitely, it was a different animal by the end of it, for sure.
Yeah.
It was. And I had a lot of hopes for that one, because that's the one that seems to have an impact when I play it live.
Yeah.
And that's the one where usually the room goes quiet and people pay attention, which surprises me every time. It feels very self-indulgent to get up and play instrumental stuff by yourself, especially when it's your own stuff.
Mm. So without giving any spoilers away and going through every single track, is there any more on the album, maybe one or two, that you might want to give a little bit of a shout out?
Yeah, so quite an important one on there is Atlantis. It's the song that I invented the tuning for. Mm-hmm. It was written for my wedding, for the signing of our register. That was a very long time ago, but
that is cool.
And then what I didn't expect was my family then used it for a couple of my grandparents' funeral as well. So it's quite a lot of emotion wrapped around that one. And then there's another one called Patchwork, which basically, because I've got so many different ideas over the last 15, 20 years, I've stitched together ideas that don't necessarily belong together. They're all very different, like a patchwork quilt. That goes on a real journey. So that goes through a variety of different styles, but hopefully it will sound coherent. So that was quite a nice thing to do with all these unfinished parts that I really liked, that I either didn't or couldn't develop into full pieces. And then one other track which is a bit different, which I'm really excited about, is when Rich, who's recording the album, jumps on keyboard or the piano and he plays my pieces by ear. It just brings it to life and I just hear it in a totally different way, and it really excited me. So I had the idea that he's going to do a piano arrangement of every one of the tracks on the album, and then play a little bit of every track, like maybe 15, 20, 30 seconds from start to end, and link them all together in a big piano medley. So all of my music is going to have this kind of, might be a hidden track, or I might want to stick a big old spotlight on it, but to have a track written just on the piano with my melodies starting from track 1 right through to the end.
That sounds really cool.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah,
It's going to be cool.
Wow. So this album, it's fair to say, it's got a bit of everything. There's a piece of your musical history of when you first started playing the guitar, the experiences that you've used when you were performing. You've now taken that into a studio, and some of the songs that you've written were inspired by different things in your personal life and also things that you've just been being creative on. You're changing the tunings on some of or all of them to a certain, and then you're having potentially instrumental of them as well on there. So this is fantastic. When is the album going to be launched? So we're in November 2024. Like to think that it's going to be 2025 early?
I would like to think it will be next month. So before the end of the year.
Before the end of the year.
Unless I get carried away and write something else we need to record, that we're pretty well on track.
I'm excited. I've heard some of the raw tracks. I can't wait to listen to the finished, finalised article. But there is someone that you wanted to have a mention to, and I have met her. Lovely wife you have, Kylie. Obviously she's been supportive.
Unbelievably, I could not have done this or anything without her, but for 20 years she's been, excuse the pun, but instrumental. She's been a driving force. She's pushed me to do this and so much more, and without her, definitely this wouldn't have happened. So, and it's not easy putting up with me at the best of times, let alone hearing me play the same thing over and over and over again. So yeah, no, Kylie's the biggest reason this has happened.
So you've got a fan at home as well?
One fan, so
one fan at home. Everyone
double digits.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for those that put up for this very impromptu, very informal chat with Chris Burness of Chris Burness Music and the launch of his, are we calling it an EP?
It's actually a full-blown album.
A full-blown album, and it's called?
The Instrumental Chapter, Chris Burness.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate. I wish you all the best. Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for your help.
Cheers, pal.